you. The next song that I'm going to be singing, so for those people that came in, I'm doing all originals.
Nice.
That was called Raise a Glass, and this one's called Almost Home. I actually co-wrote this with a friend of mine back home in Alberta last summer. And I wrote this as like, I grew up in a really small town with 500 people, and my whole life I just wanted to get away from it, go somewhere else. And I finally did, and I think I didn't go home for 2 years. But the whole entire time I just wanted to be home. So this one's called Almost Home. This town never felt like it fit me. This place has always been so small. Didn't think I really belonged here till I've been gone so long. I was tired of doing the same things. Felt like I needed some kind of change. So I wanted to follow my calling, and so I walked away. Yeah, I walked away. One more little stretch of highway, gonna take this four-wheel ride. Another 12 songs on my iPhone, 2 more towns to fly by. I can see familiar places, feel something warm inside. It's been way too long. I'm almost home. Never noticed how much this town made me into the person I am. Didn't think I really would make sense, but here I am, getting back now.
But she's fantastic.
Hey, I'm getting back now.
Play outside.
One more stretch of highway, gonna take this four-wheel ride. Another 12 songs on my iPhone, 2 more towns to fly by. I can see familiar faces, feel something warm inside. It's been way too long. Whoa, it's been
I brought
way
a bunch of
too long. Almost home. Stretch of highway, gonna take this four-wheel ride. Another 12 songs on my iPhone, 2 more towns to fly by. I can see familiar faces, feel something inside. It's been way too long. Whoa, it's been way too long. Almost home.
Yay!
I will go ahead, and I am Stephanie Osberg, and I am the chair of Healthy Minds Around the Loop. And Anissa is joining me today so we can talk about mindfulness matters as it relates to creativity. In mental health, we talk about mindfulness a lot and its importance. And sometimes people can think it's just one thing, but it doesn't need to be. So that's what we're talking about today. And how are you doing today, Anissa?
I'm doing okay. I say better than fair to Midland.
Fabulous to hear.
So that's always a good thing.
Nice to hear. And I'll have to apologize in advance because apparently I'm just a little sleepy today. But
Okay.
that is okay.
It took me 2 hours to become human this morning. You know, my trip from sleep zombie into wake human.
Yes, and I was just in a workshop, and it was really informative, but it's switching minds, which kind of is a great way to start our discussion on using mindfulness in creativity. How we were saying in our last session, using different forms of art, such as journaling, help us connect with different parts of ourselves. And I thought it would be really interesting, since we like to talk about how different tools can work in different ways for our wellness, how maybe we can use mindfulness to enhance our creativity, or use our creativity to enhance our mindfulness and create that connection.
Right. So I think first we need to start with, you know, what is mindfulness, right? And I think it's different for different people, right? You can start out with what the basic thing is, but for me, it's being in the present moment and kind of being with what I am doing and being with where I am at and who I am with, and not in the past and not in the future. So, and I don't know if that makes any sense to anyone else, but that's what mindfulness is to me. So how that can enhance my creativity is, it can give me more focus on what I'm doing right then and there and give me ideas. It can generate a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? Inspiration in me. Just being in the present moment, because my mind isn't thinking about other things. It's right there on the task at hand, or the people that I'm talking to, you know. So I'm able to be more inspired by their words, by what I'm seeing in front of me. So my mind is quicker to make connections. It's quicker to do that. But if it's thinking about what's ahead of it or thinking about what's behind it, it's not focused on those things. It's not clear for those things. It's, you know, so I think in terms of that, in terms of what it does for creativity, so just having those pathways cleared, I guess, is the best way for me to describe it, to make those connections, those inspirational and intuitive leaps, because I think creativity comes from a spontaneous place in our mind, not a pre-thought out place.
Thank you. That's really interesting. To your point, for me, the mindfulness is being in the present moment without judgment, I guess, would be the simplest definition for me for mindfulness. And sometimes I can seem counterintuitive, because for me, being creative is almost being above being mindful. Like it just kind of, it's a culmination of sitting in all of my ideas and then having them mesh together. So I have a very reductive creative process. So for me, having mindfulness will take on a bunch of different stages. So when I'm needing to come up with brand new ideas, I find the best thing for me to do is to take a walk and clear my mind and just try to do like a walking meditation, so that at all times I am trying to not have thoughts in my head. And if they come, just to let them go. And I find when I'm specifically not trying to focus on a problem, sometimes that helps it come into view clearer, opposed to sitting and doing what I do probably more often than I should, not to should on myself too much, but to sit in front of a computer and stare at the blank page in front of me. That kind of slowing my brain down doesn't seem to engage the creative process the same way that emptying it while walking for some reason. But then there'll be another piece of it that can kind of happen later. Do you find that you have different experiences with mindfulness during your creative processes?
Yes. I can be working on something and be in what I call like the flow state, which is really like in tune, like you're in it. You're completely mindfully in that working creative space, right? On whatever you're engaged in, right? And then I'll get out of it and I can't get myself back into it. So I'll have to do another activity mindfully, right? Or I'll put on an audio book and engage in something distracting like playing solitaire, let's say, right? Something that will not necessarily be the creative part of my brain, but the logical part of my brain, you know, because you're playing like spider solitaire or something like that, and you've got 4 suites going, and you're like, oh, what do I got to do? You know, like, you know, you got to do this, got to do that, something to engage another part of my brain, you know. But at the same time, you're listening to a book, so you've got another part of your brain going at the same time. So you're working the other parts of your brain, and subconsciously it's working out that creative problem. You know, it's working out that creative problem, you know, on some level it's working out that creative problem. And then I do that for like 15 minutes to try and get out of my head. And then I might go back to whatever project I was working on and stare at it for 5 minutes. And if I don't get inspiration in 5 minutes, then it's like, I leave it alone. I've got to leave it alone, because the flow is just not coming to me in that mindful state anymore. You know, I need to be in that mindful state, or I might get an aha, or I might be in the middle of doing my solitaire and get an aha, you know, or I'll sometimes just sit in silence. Sometimes the silence will help me, and I'll just, think about what I need to do in my day, or just nothing at all. And just have a cat and pet a cat and just be immersed in that. And it'll pop for me, whatever the next step is, because we all have creative projects that we work on. And sometimes really the solution is as simple as calling somebody up and asking for a collaboration, or asking for, for them to be eyes and ears, and just say, I'm stuck, and talk it through. That's part of my creative process too. I don't know if that's a mindful part of my creative process, but it's definitely part of my creative process, is reaching out and being collaborative, and trying not to own too much of what it is that I'm doing. As this is me, I can't change. Nobody else can have a part in this, it has to be mine. It has to be the way that I do it, kind of thing. But, like anything to get unstuck in that creative process, and just be, when I'm talking to that person or sharing, like if we do a Zoom session or whatever, just to, be present with, and be present, just to be present, and be like, explain where it is that I'm stuck, and collaborate. That's part of my creative process as well. I don't know if it's necessarily mindful, but part of my creative process.
Well, I guess anything that we do mindfully is mindful. So it's a beautiful thing about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when you were speaking, it was drawing me to a form of, and I almost hesitate to call it creativity, because when it comes to drawing, I have very little talent in that area. But I also sometimes find it very meditative to try to draw, and not to try to draw well, or to become an artist, or to gain more skills, but just there's something about, like, when I'm drawing something, I'm looking at details about it that I have never seen before, a little dent, or the way light shines off it, or a little mark, and things like that have always been there, but because I wasn't really focusing in on it, I didn't notice. So like I hadn't really thought about that being meditative, because I'm meditating on a mug, but I guess, yeah, I can meditate on a mug, and I can get a mindfulness practice that isn't really about being creative so much, but as using creativity to gain a different kind of mindfulness.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's true. It's like looking at art as opposed to creating art, right? So when we're consumers of art, when we are consumers of writing, right? When it's fiction, right? We are taken into another mindset. So we are the consumers of somebody else's creative product, right? Even if we're looking at a PowerPoint that has, you can tell, or a graphic that is just high quality, you can tell somebody put some time and effort into it, You are actually looking at something and it is saying something to you. You are being affected by it. Your emotions are being affected by it. Your mind state is being affected by it. It is telling you a story in some way. So, yes, if you're looking at it, if you're consuming it in a mindful way, in a present way, you can use that creative consumption to get to a mindful state, if that is your objective, you know.
Yes, and of course I'm looking at your painting behind you and just thinking how
There goes my house, but trying to give you a better look at the painting, and then of course it breaks up.
But yes, like you were saying, just that you I'm gonna be a little geeky here, but like it's almost like you get to mind meld with the artist when you are in that spot. Just try to like that immersion. And as someone who truly does not appreciate art because I haven't been educated on it, so I don't, there are some things that people understand and react to on a technical side, but for me, art is always just emotion. It's, does it speak to me? Does it create a happy feeling or a sad feeling or a, I don't like that, or whatever it is trying to do? Does it make me not think? Does it make me think? So yes, for me, art has never been like looking at the masters to try to figure out their technique. It's always been about just trying to be in awe or be in absorption, I guess.
Right. And you'll find that, well, for me, that was my original journey into loving art and loving, like, especially Renaissance art. But then the journey also got into the technique as well of what distinguishes Renaissance art from medieval art, right? Is that they started using mirrors to denote dimension in the works of art, because they didn't show dimension and distance, and so they regained lost techniques from the classical era, right? And there are different techniques that they use for light and shadow, and different palettes that they use that are just like ingenious. And I'm not just talking like there's brush stroke work that they use, and like, you know, like the different, you know, like there's impressionism and surrealism and all the different types of, you know, genres. But there's like the different brush strokes that they use. But I never try and figure out what the artist, you know, or the author originally intended. Like that's a fun game to play that I play for maybe 5 minutes, you know. But then I say, at the end of the day, that's relevant to the author or the artist in their day and time. But what makes this art relevant to me in my day and time? What makes it significant to me personally, and then what makes it significant to my culture and society now? What makes this art still relevant? What makes it still live on till today?
Right. And you brought up an interesting point too with culture and art being such a huge part of culture. I'm not very familiar with Arabic art styles. other than what I've seen when I've traveled. And I've seen some glorious art. And now that to me seems like it would have been a very meditative style, so intricate and yet not, and how do I put it? Just because you're limited in what you can show in the art, being able, like, that constraint creates opportunity. It's just so beautiful.
The calligraphy and the cuneiform. Yeah, the calligraphic and the cuneiform that they use and a lot of the Arabic art. Well, a lot of it has been done in architecture. They were masters at architecture and back in the day. And a lot of the art that they did, the frescoes, were calligraphy and cuneiform. And a lot of the portrait-y kind of art that you get is like Persian or Afghan, or some of it is from India, you know. But the true Arabic stuff is like the calligraphy and the cuneiform. We had 2 paintings by Arabic artists, but you know, like the famous stuff is the stuff that you get at the mosques, you know, the architecture and the cuneiform and calligraphy that you get at the mosque. And that is basically what Arabic art is.
And water. That is something that I remember. The use of water in architecture to cool, but also as art, to reflect art, to grow art. Just everything is so mindfully thought out. Nothing is thrown together. It all reflects and has purpose. And it's, I'm thinking specifically of Alhambra in Spain where I was, and I'm just remembering that main pool and all of the thought and care that would have gone into that. And even hundreds of years later, you can feel the life. You can feel people still living there. It doesn't seem like you would go back in time. Anyone could just move in and live.
Right. I'm thinking of some of the mosques, and I know in Turkey, and I know some of them were originally churches, but some of them were built as mosques. Like the Sophia Hajj Museum Mosque was originally a church, but there are other ones that were built originally as mosques in Turkey. And those are beautiful, the architecture in them.
Yes, I haven't seen either, but I've heard the Blue Mosque is out of the world, along with the Hagia Sophia, but the Blue Mosque is one that I've heard about less, so I'm curious about more.
Yeah, well, there's all that controversy with the other one, so yeah. But yeah, the Blue Mosque, I did a virtual traveler group to Turkey. So we went to Istanbul, and the Blue Mosque was one of the places we visited. So there were images of it, and it is quite beautiful. And one of the interesting things about Turkey is they have cats all over the place, just like feral cats. And the cats go into the mosques. The cats are in the mosques and stuff. So you see pictures of cats in mosques all the time. It's really cute.
I think that would enhance any prayer experience. How could it not?
Yeah. And you know, like you have the mosques, and I've never been to them, but the mosques in Saudi Arabia that are supposed to be around the the Kaaba, and
Mhm.
then you have the Prophet Muhammad Mosque in Medina, and they're the two holiest in Islam, the first two holiest sites in Islam. And they're supposed to be a wonder to behold. But I have never seen them.
This is off topic, but have you ever wanted to go on a Hajj?
You know, I think just for the ritual and rite of it, it would be a very interesting thing to do. It is very tiered in terms of socioeconomic status. You know, the people there, you know, like that there are people who get who die every year because the conditions are poor because they didn't have enough money, you know. So there are I have problems with the way that the kingdom handles the tourist aspect of it, the travel aspect of it. But as a rite and a ritual to do, I think it would be amazing. And there's one that you can do that's called an Umrah. That's not the actual Hajj, but it's kind of like a kind of half rite, you know, like you kind of do half the Hajj. You do almost all of the actions that you do in the Hajj. And you don't do it at the specific time of the Hajj. Yeah. So I've thought of doing that. But at this point in time, I do not want to go to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Mm-mm.
Understandable. Going back to some stuff that when I was doing a little research on the benefits of using mindfulness and creativity, a few things popped up. And I think two of them that I'd really like to talk about are meaning and accomplishment. Because with creativity, and I am, you can have some of the most meaningful times. I've had some of the most meaningful times of my life just quiet inside me, shared alone. But at the same time, to be purposeful and intentional in a creative process that is focused on mindfulness and meaning. I just thought that really offered opportunity for me to explore that a little deeper. It's kind of what made me think about my drawing,
Mm-hmm.
of how the end result doesn't necessarily need to be meaningful, but having an end result can enhance meaning. And I'm not even sure how I feel about that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that for me, like when I would right now my materials for mindful coloring are put away. They're in a box somewhere, of course. But I get that feeling with mindful coloring, right? Like I'm never gonna sell these drawings. These drawings are never going to make me a famous artist. These colorings, excuse me, I'm not actually drawing, but these colorings are never going to make me famous. They're never going to make me money. They're never going to do anything, but I enjoy doing them so much. They give me such a creative outlet, and they engage both sides of my brain, both my emotional and my logical brain. I can be in wise mind when I do it because I'm in this mindful spot, but I'm also able to use the planning side of my mind to a certain degree of just quickly glancing at the page and saying, I want this to be orange, or I want this to be yellow, and I want it to be in a pastel color or in a watercolor or in a this color, and I'm going to shade it, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, right? So I'm doing a planning process, but it's a creative planning process, right? So in a sense, I am using the logical side of my brain, you know, because I'm doing the planning process, but it's a creative, you know, because I'm not saying, okay, I've got to correct my grammar, you know, which is usually the side of my brain that I'm using when I'm doing creative process. Like, I've got to correct my grammar here, or I've got to, you know, like list out these words, or, you know, like I'm creating a training or a workshop or a presentation or something like that. So I'm working in colors. I'm working in colors. I'm working in textures. I'm working in shapes. I'm working in different materials. I'm not working in words and numbers. So though I'm using the logical side of my brain, I'm not using the same side. You know, I'm using more of a right side than my left side. Yeah.
Right.
So so it so engages me, and I get so much meaning out of it. And when, even if I don't finish, because the coloring pages are so intricate, even if I don't finish it, I get a sense of satisfaction on the parts that I completed. And then I can look back at it, and then I can kind of visualize the other parts and what I want to do next. You know what I mean? And kind of be okay that this is as far as I got with it today, because I go at it and my fingers kind of get sore a little bit, you know, from the coloring that I do and everything. And so I have to put it away and say, okay, let's get to this tomorrow, or, you know, in a couple of days or something like that. But I do understand what you're saying. Like that feeling of meaning that you get out of the mindful activity, but the mindful activity is like that gives me that purposefulness, that richness, that fullness, that like I'm still mindful about it, I'm still present with it, but I'm still using all the parts of my brain. But it's in a mindful way. It's not like I'm thinking 50 steps ahead. I'm just glancing and saying, this is what I want to do. It's what I want to do. It's not what I'm going to do. It's what I want to do. You know, even my language changes, you know, I'm mindful about my language. Like, I'm not shooting myself. I need to, it's what I want, you know?
Yeah, and you also said a really interesting word, and I think it's important when we're talking about wellness and health, is that it's an outlet. So that it's for me, sounds slightly different than something you're just naturally doing or giving. It is something that releases something in you as well. There is something outside of all of those other things that is happening during that time. I just think that's really interesting. I don't know if that is the same for all creative people, but I've certainly heard that. Like it's just I need to do I need to get that out.
Yeah, it's engaging. It's like needing to engage those parts of your mind. Like I feel like I need to play solitaire sometimes, or I need to play Sudoku sometimes. I need those engagements. Like the other day, I signed up for a pre-calculus class that had like just where you could do math problems endlessly on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I just felt like I hadn't used that part of my brain in a long time.
Right.
And I needed to use that part of my brain again.
I think that's great. I also think that's creative. And the reason that I think that type of thing is creative, it's because it is pieces. Like for me, art is putting together of pieces, whether it's words or lines on a page or notes, whatever that is. So when you're taking on new things and exercising new parts of your brain, like that to me are just more tools for art.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The only problem is that the pre-calculus class kept giving me fractions. And even when I was using that part of my brain all the time, fractions would trip me up sometimes. So imagine me being like, here I am, I'm like, 20 plus years out of practice. And I'm getting fraction after fraction after fraction. So I think I spent like 10 hours of my life and I was like, fractions, you will not defeat me again. So over a period of like a month and a half, I think I spent 10 hours of my life making sure that fractions didn't defeat me again. I think I'll go back to doing that again. It was, it got the juices flowing, it really, because you need to use, I feel like for me, I need to use all the different parts of my brain, like when I was in school and I would go to school, when we would all go to school, we would have math, we would have English, we would have history, we would have social science, we would have this, we would have that. We would get the different parts of our brain stimulated throughout the day, right?
Yeah.
And yes, we liked some of those more than others, and maybe we didn't like any of them, but at least the parts of our brain were being stimulated. And that's what I feel like in my current life sometimes I'm missing, is that stimulation to certain parts of my brain, because I'm not doing all of those different, science. I'm not doing the science activities. I'm not doing the math activities all the time, or at least the difficult ones, like I'm delving into it a little bit, but I'm not like deep diving into it, like I'm not, doing physics equations or anything like that. I might just be reading a little bit about physics and then being like, okay, I've had enough. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Got it. Let's go. We're moving on.
Yes, I love a good conversation about string theory, but as soon as I look at those numbers, man, it's just beyond.
But I think that's part of being creative, is like that stimulating the different parts of our brain, because creativity comes in all different facets. A mathematician needs to be creative. A physicist needs to be creative. It's not just in the arts that we find creativity. even in my normal day-to-day activities, I need to find a way to be creative, to be able to connect to people in creative ways, to get them to trust in me in creative ways. I need to find ways to write up curriculum and engage people in the process in creative ways, be it through the visuals that I put in those things, or the words, or the whatever. That I have to be creative in my normal life. It's not just about, drawing and writing a nonfiction, a short story or nonfiction, like, yes, that's where my emotional creativity goes, but I have to be creative in other facets of my life.
Yes, and I agree wholeheartedly, where every job requires creativity, even if you have, heaven forbid, one of those jobs where you're pushing a button over and over and over again. I bet in the back of that person's mind, they're a great storyteller or singer or whatever is going on within them that is supporting them during that process.
Right.
But yeah, like some of the most creative people I've ever met are office managers, just because it's a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of absolutely everything that needs to get organized, and usually in ways that are like, oh, this is happening right now. Okay, you. So yeah, creativity is such a gift in any job. So I love having these conversations, like using it for health, using it for wellness, but also just not looking at different aspects of our life as if they live in silos. Part of being a whole person is I am a journaler even when I'm not journaling, and I sing even when I'm not singing. I do, like, it doesn't change that that is a part of me. Now, mind you, I'm sure people would appreciate if I didn't sing when I was working with them. Sometimes I don't, and I'm nice. But there is always a piece of creativity, physical wellness, emotional wellness, intellectual wellness. All of these things are so intertwined with each other. So having these conversations about how we can intertwine them purposefully in order to be healthier or have more fun or help us achieve our goals is always the goal of this gathering, not
Right.
to offer solutions or give advice, but just to have how we can be healthy in our own ways and how we can live a fullest life as possible, regardless of whether or not you have a mental illness diagnosis or you're supporting someone who has a mental illness diagnosis, or you don't know anyone who has a mental illness diagnosis and you just like talking about this kind of stuff. That is the opportunity.
Right. Yeah, I love that. We're all integrated parts of a whole, we all are like, have integrated pieces that are parts of a whole self, It's just sometimes, how do you integrate all of those pieces into a whole to realize it, to see it fully, to appreciate it?
Yeah, and to accept it
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and just be like, yeah, it's okay that I am this way.
Cool.
It's okay to be a little creative. It's okay to sing in the shower. That doesn't mean I can't be serious. And it doesn't mean that, like, if I need to, like, if I'm in an emergency and I need to switch into everybody's got to be told what to do and get things done now mode, that also isn't a part of who I am.
Mhm. Mhm.
And they're all okay. And they're all, personally, when I let my parts of the whole get too disconnected, I become unwell.
Mhm.
So and I don't know if anyone else is like that, but for me, it is important to look for ways to do this integrating work, to be funny appropriately, because I'm a funny person, but a lot of times I don't act very funny because I can be silly, and that can hurt people's feelings sometimes, like I don't want to tease somebody and hurt them. So but at the same time, I do want to bring that out a bit. So, like, how do we do it? How do we do it safely?
Mhm. Right, exactly. Yeah. And how do we do it in a way that is being authentic and genuine to ourselves and honoring other people? Yeah, exactly what you were saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but I do like that. And then just to, like, I guess Bobby really wants to be part of the community cafe today. He is
Bobby.
a creative, mindful cat that is trying to close or open my laptop really wide right now. And I think that when we are intentional, and mindful about things, and we look to ourselves and we look to all of these different, this whole, our whole self, and we can look at it without judgment and without compassion, we can see the different sides of ourselves, and hold them and see the creativity that we bring to each facet of our life, because there is creativity that we bring to each facet of our life. And that's empowering because that creativity flows from within us, that
Yeah.
and that's powerful. That creativity flows from within us.
It is. You can get a lot from that. The hope, the strength, courage. So much power there.
And it's good to think of creativity not just as art, but it could be thinking about a creative solution to a problem that you might be facing right now, and it's an out of the box, dynamic solution.
Yeah.
And that's creative. That's creativity.
Definitely. It can be planting your garden. It can be arranging your cutlery drawer. It should be on my list today. It is how, like, problem solving beautifully. Problem solving with flair.
Exactly. It can be anything. So creativity is in every facet of our lives, and can come out in any way, even in our humor. The way that we're humorous is creative. The way that we string words together is creative. So just remember to be mindful in your life and always be remembering that what you bring to the table, you bring to the table creatively with your creativity and flair.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us today. I'm trying to remember, we're doing physical health next month.
Mhm.
So we will be talking about how our physical health impacts our emotional and mental health throughout April. So
My physical health really doesn't help me. I'm really bad at the physical health stuff. I could talk about creativity and mindfulness all day long.
well, like some people didn't think they're creative, you'll probably find out you're much more physical than you
Okay.
realize. Well,
I'll
we'll
be
find
sure
out.
to learn.
Thank you so much for coming today.
Not a problem, Steph. It was so great to be here.
And we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Okay, great. Shall I leave?
Bye.
Bye-bye.
I'm going to close the meeting.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
I crashed my car into a tree and saw all of my enemies before the clock struck noon. All I had was glum and gloom. The sky was all fogged over and I lost my four-leaf clover. But I won't sit and wallow, I know just how not to feel so hollow. Put my best makeup on and those pants that make my legs long. I know what I wanna do, I wanna feel cute today. I wanna feel cute. I wanna feel cute today. I wanna feel cute. I tore my last blue pillowcase and broke my best friend's favorite face, but she said I broke her vase. Couldn't have been more at odds. My yogurt's all been spoiled and my blood has all but boiled. But I won't sit and stew, I know just how not to feel so blue. Put my favorite dress on and that hat with all the chiffon. I know what I wanna do, I wanna feel cute today. I wanna feel cute. I wanna feel cute today. I wanna feel cute. I know pretty things won't make the whole world's problems disappear. There's plenty of different reasons to feel woe or to feel fear. But if there's just one thing that I can do to feel more fears, I wanna feel cute today. I wanna feel cute. I wanna feel cute today. I wanna feel cute. Feel a little more okay. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. Feel a little more okay.
Saw a ring around the moon just recently. Spring night so cold, never used to be. I thought of waking you up for you to come and see, but it was too late. And I thought I'd call my decency so Took a picture in the ice in the atmosphere, and I went back inside, choked back a tear. Life's a little bit easier when you're here. Everything I say, I'm saying to somebody else. Buster always picked me up, talking to myself. Never did me no harm to my mental health. Busting it all twice a day, a little bit swell. You wanna find your joy, you gotta get down low. I got your message of love right here. Life's a little bit easier. Life is a little bit easier when you're here. Oh, oh. Probably the best we're ever gonna do for ourselves. Feeling like going to battle. I make shaking Madeline to call your cattle. Trying to turn the tide, do it all over again, and again, and again, yeah. Oh, oh, oh. I know a woman, she named her girl Verity. She wants to raise hell with me. All sincerity, we're holding each other back. In some hilarity, we ought to lay down, make a plan for prosperity on any given Sunday. They call petty, but this is like connecting dots. Self-parity, I'm an indigo girl. I got wind seeking clarity, and my house ain't got a wind. You know that that's a rare now. Wanna get in the moment, can't let it go, never really got back. All I know is life's a little bit easier. Life's a little bit easier when you're here. Help me out. Life's a little bit easier. Life's a little bit easier. Life's a little bit easier when you're here. Oh, life's a little bit easier. Life's just a little bit easier. Life's a little bit easier. Well,